In the annals of history, few names command as much awe and intrigue as Napoleon Bonaparte. Born on the small island of Corsica, he rose to reshape the world as a military genius, revolutionary leader, and self-crowned emperor of France. His brilliance on the battlefield and sweeping reforms transformed France and influenced nations far beyond its borders. Yet, his story is not only one of triumph, but also of downfall, life defined by ambition, love, and the ultimate cost of power. Join us as we delve into the extraordinary journey of Napoleon Bonaparte, exploring the man behind the legend and the legacy that continues to shape history today. If you're ready to uncover the triumphs and trials of this iconic leader, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Bytes. Let's journey together through the life of a man who dared to defy limits. In a time of revolution and upheaval, one man emerged to change the course of history. From the rugged island of Corsica, a young and ambitious Napoleon Bonaparte rose through the chaos of the French Revolution to become one of the most powerful figures the world has ever known. His journey was nothing short of extraordinary, a story of relentless ambition, unparalleled military genius, and a vision to reshape an entire continent. Napoleon's name became synonymous with both triumph and controversy. He crowned himself Emperor of France, redefined legal systems with the Napoleonic Code, and led armies across Europe in campaigns that reshaped nations. Yet, his meteoric rise was matched only by his dramatic fall, as ambition and miscalculation brought his empire crashing down. But Napoleon's legacy endures. His impact resonates in modern legal systems, in stories of leadership and power, and in the echoes of battles that shaped history. His life is not just a tale of conquests and defeats, it is a lesson in vision, resilience, and the complexities of human ambition. Today, we journey into the life of a man who dared to dream beyond limits, whose shadow still looms large over history. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15, 1769, in the town of Ajaccio, on the Mediterranean island of Corsica. His birth came just a year after Corsica had been ceded to France by the Republic of Genoa, an event that would profoundly shape his identity and future ambitions. The Bonaparte family, of Italian descent, was part of the island's minor nobility, but lived modestly compared to the aristocracy of mainland France. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, was a lawyer and a local representative to the French court. Initially aligned with Corsican nationalist leader Pasquale Paoli, Carlo shifted his loyalty to France when Paoli's resistance faltered. This decision secured opportunities for his family, including access to French education for his children. Napoleon's mother, Letizia Romolino, was a strong and disciplined woman whose resilience and resourcefulness deeply influenced her son's character. Napoleon grew up in a household with 7 siblings, navigating the tensions between Corsican pride and the influence of French culture. This duality shaped his identity. He was fiercely ambitious and eager to prove himself, yet acutely aware of his outsider status in the elite circles of France. At the age of 9, Napoleon left Corsica to attend school in mainland France, starting at the Collège d'Autun and later transferring to the military college at Brienne. His early years were marked by isolation and struggle. He was often ridiculed by his peers for his Corsican accent and his modest origins. Yet, this adversity fueled his determination. Napoleon immersed himself in his studies, excelling in mathematics, history, and military strategy, laying the foundation for his future brilliance. Napoleon's early life in Corsica and his formative years in France instilled in him a sense of purpose and a desire to transcend the limitations of his background. The challenges he faced as a young man shaped the relentless ambition and resilience that would define his extraordinary rise to power. It was in these early years that the seeds of his destiny were sown, preparing him to step onto the stage of history as a transformative figure. At the age of 15, Napoleon Bonaparte entered the prestigious École Militaire in Paris, marking the next step in his path toward greatness. The rigorous training and disciplined environment of the academy, were a far cry from his modest beginnings in Corsica. But Napoleon thrived. He specialized in artillery, a field that combined his sharp intellect and mathematical prowess with practical military application. The sudden death of his father in 1785 forced Napoleon to complete his studies in just 1 year, an accelerated timeline that demanded extraordinary focus and dedication. Despite financial pressures and the challenges of being an outsider in the elite circles of Paris, he graduated as a second lieutenant in the artillery. His instructors recognized his potential, describing him as ambitious, determined, and destined for significant achievements. Napoleon's early military postings were less glamorous than his later exploits, but equally formative. His first assignment was with the La Fère Artillery Regiment in Valence. Here he immersed himself in further study, reading voraciously on military tactics, philosophy, and history. His time was spent not only refining his technical skills, but also developing the strategic mind that would later define him as a leader. Returning briefly to Corsica, Napoleon became embroiled in local politics and the island's resistance to French control. However, a falling out with Corsican nationalist leader Pasquale Paoli forced him and his family to flee to mainland France. This pivotal moment severed his ties to Corsican independence and cemented his allegiance to France, setting the stage for his meteoric rise. The French Revolution provided the perfect storm for an ambitious young officer like Napoleon. Amid the chaos, opportunities arose for those who could lead and innovate. Napoleon's early education and artillery expertise gave him a distinct edge, allowing him to quickly demonstrate his capabilities in a rapidly changing military landscape. These formative years, shaped by rigorous education, personal loss, and early challenges, forged Napoleon into a resourceful and determined leader. They laid the groundwork for the remarkable achievements that would soon elevate him to the forefront of France's Revolutionary Army and, ultimately, the pages of history. The French Revolution, a time of upheaval and transformation, created an unprecedented landscape for ambitious individuals like Napoleon Bonaparte to rise. The collapse of the monarchy and the reorganization of France's political and social systems led to chaos, but also to opportunities for those who could navigate the turmoil. For Napoleon, it was a turning point that allowed him to step out of obscurity and into the spotlight. In 1789, as the revolution swept through France, Napoleon observed the unfolding events with keen interest. Initially stationed in Valence, he continued to study military strategy while keeping a close eye on the political currents. The revolution's ideals of equality and meritocracy resonated with him, offering a path to prominence for someone of his modest Corsican origins. The abolition of noble privileges and the emphasis on talent over birth aligned perfectly with his ambitions. Napoleon's alignment with the Jacobins, a radical political faction during the Revolution, proved pivotal. The Jacobins, led by figures like Maximilien Robespierre, sought to consolidate the revolution through decisive and often ruthless measures. Napoleon's tactical brilliance and his loyalty to their cause earned him favor within their ranks. His early support for the revolutionary government showcased his ability to align himself with those in power while maintaining his independence as a military strategist. Napoleon's first major opportunity came in 1793 during the Siege of Toulon. The port city had fallen into the hands of royalists and their British allies, posing a significant threat to the revolution. At just 24 years old, Napoleon devised an audacious plan to retake the city by strategically placing artillery to dominate key positions. His plan succeeded brilliantly, forcing the British to retreat and securing a decisive victory for the Republic. This success earned him a promotion to brigadier general, propelling him into the national spotlight. Despite the dangers of aligning with the Jacobins during the Reign of Terror, Napoleon's survival and growing reputation as a military genius kept him moving forward. His adaptability and sharp instincts allowed him to navigate the shifting political landscape, even after the fall of the Jacobins. By the mid-1790s, he had become a trusted figure in the French military. Recognized for his leadership and tactical ingenuity, The French Revolution was both a crucible and a catalyst for Napoleon. It dismantled the old hierarchies, allowing a young, ambitious officer to rise based on merit. The chaos and conflict of the era revealed Napoleon's extraordinary ability to lead, innovate, and seize opportunities. It was in these revolutionary years that the seeds of his future empire were planted. As he began to emerge not just as a soldier, but as a leader, destined to reshape the world. In 1796, Napoleon Bonaparte was handed command of the Army of Italy, a position many considered a poisoned chalice. The army was in disarray supplied, underpaid, and demoralized. Yet Napoleon saw opportunity where others saw despair. At just 26 years old, he was determined to prove his worth. And this campaign would cement his reputation as one of history's great military leaders. Napoleon's first move was to rally his troops, instilling in them a sense of purpose and confidence. His speeches were electrifying, painting a vision of glory and reward that inspired loyalty and rekindled their fighting spirit. With an unmatched ability to connect with his soldiers, he turned a disorganized group into a disciplined and motivated force, ready to take on the might of Austria and its allies. His campaign in Italy was nothing short of revolutionary. Napoleon's use of speed, mobility, and innovative tactics outmaneuvered his opponents at every turn. At battles like Montenotte and Lodi, his forces struck with precision and ferocity, often achieving victory against numerically superior enemies. He mastered the art of dividing his enemies, striking decisively at isolated units before they could regroup. A strategy that would become a hallmark of his military genius. One of his most celebrated victories came at the Battle of Arcole, where Napoleon's audacity and personal bravery were on full display. Facing formidable Austrian defenses, he famously seized a flag and led his troops across a bridge under heavy fire, inspiring them to push forward and claim victory. This boldness earned him not only military success, but the adoration of his men and admiration from political leaders back in France. Beyond the battlefield, Napoleon demonstrated an acute understanding of the political landscape. He negotiated treaties that expanded French influence and extracted resources to sustain his army. His victories not only secured territory for France, but also undermined Austria's hold on northern Italy, reshaping the balance of power in Europe. By the end of the Italian campaign, Napoleon had achieved what many thought impossible. He had transformed the ragged army of Italy into a formidable force and won a series of victories that secured his reputation as a military prodigy. His success elevated him to national hero status and positioned him as a rising star in French politics. The Italian campaign was more than a military triumph. It was a defining moment in Napoleon's career. It revealed his brilliance as a strategist, his charisma as a leader, and his relentless drive to succeed. The lessons he learned and the fame he garnered during this campaign set the stage for his ascent to power, marking the beginning of his extraordinary journey to reshape Europe. In 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte embarked on an ambitious campaign to Egypt, a bold venture aimed at undermining British dominance by disrupting their trade routes to India. Beyond its strategic objectives, Napoleon envisioned the campaign as an opportunity to expand French influence in the East, while glorifying his own reputation as a visionary leader. However, what began as a grand ambition quickly unraveled into a costly and complex endeavor. Napoleon's arrival in Egypt was marked by initial success. The French army achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of the Pyramids, defeating the Mamluk forces and securing Cairo. Napoleon used this victory to present himself not only as a military conqueror, but also as a liberator and patron of science. He brought with him a team of scholars and scientists, whose work led to significant discoveries, including the Rosetta Stone, which would eventually unlock the secrets of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. However, the triumphs of the campaign were overshadowed by mounting challenges. Just weeks after the victory at the Pyramids, Napoleon's fleet was destroyed by Admiral Horatio Nelson at the Battle of the Nile. The loss stranded Napoleon and his forces in Egypt, cutting off their supply lines and leaving them vulnerable. This defeat dealt a severe blow to French morale and tarnished Napoleon's aura of invincibility. As the campaign dragged on, the French forces faced fierce resistance from local populations, harsh desert conditions, and outbreaks of disease. Despite these difficulties, Napoleon attempted to extend his reach, even launching a campaign into Syria. Yet, the siege of Acre proved disastrous, with the French army suffering heavy casualties and failing to capture the strategic city. Realizing the campaign was turning into a quagmire, Napoleon made a calculated decision to abandon his army and return to France in 1799, leaving his troops under the command of General Jean-Baptiste Kleber. Napoleon's departure was controversial but strategically astute. He understood that his political ambitions required him to be in France, where the revolutionary government was faltering, and opportunities for power were emerging. Napoleon's return to France marked a pivotal moment in his career. Despite the overall failure of the Egyptian campaign, he skillfully spun the narrative, emphasizing his victories and the scientific achievements of the expedition. The public perception of Napoleon as a hero and a visionary remained largely intact, allowing him to leverage his reputation for his next move, the coup of 18 Brumaire. The Egyptian campaign, though disastrous in military terms, showcased both Napoleon's boldness and his ability to navigate setbacks. It demonstrated his willingness to take risks and his unmatched skill in shaping public opinion. While the campaign did not achieve its intended goals, it added to the legend of Napoleon, blending triumph and failure into a story that would continue to captivate history. The coup of 18 Brumaire on November 9, 1799, was a turning point in French history, marking the end of the Directory and the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte as a dominant political force. It was a carefully orchestrated and largely bloodless coup d'etat that showcased Napoleon's ambition, strategic genius, and ability to capitalize on political instability. By 1799, the Directory, the ruling government established after the French Revolution, was deeply unpopular and riddled with corruption. It struggled to address France's economic challenges, internal dissent, and external threats. Sensing an opportunity, key political figures, including Emmanuel Joseph Size, one of the directors, sought a leader with the charisma and authority to stabilize the country. Napoleon, fresh from his return from Egypt and still celebrated as a hero, was the perfect candidate. The plan for the coup was meticulously crafted. Size and his allies exploited fears of a supposed Jacobin uprising, convincing the legislative councils to relocate from Paris to St. Cloud, ostensibly for their safety. This maneuver placed the government in a controlled environment, away from the volatile streets of the capital. Napoleon was brought in to provide military support, lending credibility and force to the operation. On the day of the coup, Napoleon appeared before the legislative bodies to demand changes to the government. However, his inexperience in political speechmaking nearly derailed the plot. His clumsy and combative rhetoric angered many deputies, leading to chaos. At one point, he was physically attacked and had to be rescued by his soldiers. Despite this setback, Napoleon's brother, Lucien Bonaparte, who presided over one of the councils, stepped in to calm the situation, declaring that the councils were under threat and calling for military intervention. Napoleon's troops, loyal and well-disciplined, swiftly moved to secure the chambers and disperse the dissenting deputies. With the legislative bodies dissolved, the remaining loyal members passed a resolution establishing a new government, the consulate. Power was now concentrated in the hands of three provisional consuls, Napoleon, Size, and Pierre Roger Ducos. While Size had envisioned himself as the dominant figure in the new regime, Napoleon quickly outmaneuvered him. Within months, he restructured the government, ensuring his position as first consul a role that granted him near dictatorial authority. The new constitution, overwhelmingly approved in a public referendum, cemented Napoleon's control and marked the beginning of a new era in French governance. The coup of 18 Brumaire was a masterclass in political strategy. Napoleon's role demonstrated his ability to adapt, seize opportunities, and turn crises to his advantage. It marked the transition from the instability of the revolutionary period to the centralized and authoritarian rule of Napoleon, setting the stage for his eventual coronation as Emperor of France. This moment not only secured his dominance, but also reshaped the trajectory of French and European history. As first consul, Napoleon Bonaparte wasted no time consolidating power and transforming France. Following the coup of 18 Brumaire in 1799, he emerged as the dominant figure in the new government, outmaneuvering his co-consuls and rapidly centralizing authority. Under the new constitution, Napoleon held significant executive power, allowing him to appoint officials, draft laws, and command the military. He used these tools to stabilize a nation fractured by years of revolution and war. Napoleon's reforms as first consul were swift and far-reaching. Designed to address the economic, social, and administrative challenges that plagued France, his financial reforms stabilized the currency and restored confidence in the economy. He established the Bank of France in 1800, creating a centralized financial institution that provided stability and facilitated economic growth. On the legal front, Napoleon initiated the creation of the Napoleonic Code, a comprehensive set of civil laws that would become one of his most enduring legacies. Introduced in 1804, the code abolished feudal privileges, ensured property rights, and enshrined the principle of legal equality for all men. Though it limited women's rights and reinforced patriarchal structures, it became a model for legal systems worldwide and symbolized the modernization of France. Napoleon also prioritized education and administrative efficiency. He reorganized the education system, establishing lycees to train future civil servants and military officers. He restructured local governance, appointing prefects to oversee regions, ensuring direct control from the central government. His Concordat of 1801 with the Catholic Church was a masterstroke of diplomacy, mending the rift between the Church and the revolutionary state. The agreement restored the Church's role in French society while maintaining state control over its operations, a balance that appeased both devout Catholics and secular revolutionaries. Napoleon's military victories as first consul further bolstered his popularity. His triumph at the Battle of Marengo in 1800 secured French dominance in Italy and demonstrated his strategic brilliance. These successes, coupled with his domestic reforms, earned him widespread admiration among the French people, who viewed him as a stabilizing force capable of restoring France's glory. In 1802, a referendum overwhelmingly approved Napoleon's appointment as first consul for life, a clear indication of his growing authority and the public's support. This position granted him the power to shape France's future with little opposition, setting the stage for his eventual coronation as emperor. Napoleon's tenure as first consul was a period of transformation and consolidation. Through bold reforms, decisive leadership, and a keen understanding of public sentiment, he reshaped France into a centralized and efficient state. His popularity as first consul not only solidified his grip on power, but also laid the groundwork for the creation of the French Empire, as Napoleon prepared to elevate himself from leader to sovereign. On December 2, 1804, in the grandeur of Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, Napoleon Bonaparte ascended to the pinnacle of power, transforming from first consul to Emperor of France. This moment was not just a coronation, it was a carefully orchestrated spectacle that symbolized Napoleon's extraordinary journey from an ambitious, Corsican outsider to the ruler of a vast and powerful empire. The ceremony, attended by dignitaries, military leaders, and the French elite, was steeped in pageantry and symbolism. Pope Pius VII had been invited to officiate, marking a reconciliation with the Catholic Church and lending divine legitimacy to Napoleon's rule. Yet, in a move that captured his defiance and independence, Napoleon famously took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. This act sent a powerful message. His authority was not granted by God or the Church, but claimed by his own will and merit. Napoleon also crowned his wife, Josephine, as empress. solidifying her role beside him and showcasing the personal and political partnership that defined much of his reign. The moment was both personal and political, reflecting his desire to create a dynasty and cement his legacy. The self-coronation was a stark departure from traditional monarchy, rejecting the divine right of kings while asserting a new kind of authority, one rooted in revolutionary ideals of meritocracy and personal achievement, albeit shaped by Napoleon's centralization of power. It was a declaration that he had risen to this position through his own brilliance and ambition, not through inheritance or divine sanction. The coronation marked a critical transition in Napoleon's rule. It was the culmination of his consolidation of power, elevating him from the revolutionary leader who championed the Republic to an emperor who reshaped France into a clear centralized state. Under his leadership, France would embark on a new era of expansion and reform, as Napoleon sought to extend his influence across Europe. Yet, this moment also carried the seeds of his eventual downfall. By assuming the mantle of emperor, Napoleon solidified his authority, but distanced himself from the revolutionary ideals that had propelled him to prominence. The crown symbolized his ambition, but it also foreshadowed the challenges of maintaining control over an empire built on both revolutionary principles and imperial dominance. Napoleon's coronation remains one of the most iconic events in history, a moment that epitomized his rise to greatness and the complex legacy he would leave behind. It was a declaration of independence, power, and ambition, one that defined the man and the empire he sought to create. The Napoleonic Code, introduced on March 21, 1804, was one of Napoleon Bonaparte's most enduring legacies, officially known as the French Civil Code. It was a comprehensive set of laws that transformed French society and set the foundation for legal systems across the world. Its creation marked a departure from the fragmented and often conflicting laws of pre-revolutionary France, unifying the nation under a single, coherent legal framework. At its core, the Napoleonic Code enshrined principles that reflected the revolutionary ideals of equality before the law and the abolition of feudal privileges. It declared that all men were equal in the eyes of the law, regardless of birth or social status. It ensured property rights, freedom of religion, and the secular nature of the state, aligning with the aspirations of a society that had emerged from the upheaval of the French Revolution. The code was revolutionary in its clarity and accessibility. Unlike the complex and often inaccessible legal traditions of the past, the Napoleonic Code was written in clear language, making it understandable to ordinary citizens and ensuring its widespread adoption. It established rules for civil rights, family law, property, and contracts, creating a standardized system that applied uniformly across France and its territories. However, the code was not without controversy. While it advanced many progressive ideas, it reinforced patriarchal structures. It granted significant authority to male heads of households, limited women's rights, and reduced their ability to inherit property or initiate divorce. These provisions reflected the societal norms of the time, balancing revolutionary ideals with conservative values. The impact of the Napoleonic Code extended far beyond France. As Napoleon's armies spread across Europe, they brought the code with them, influencing legal systems in countries such as Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands. Over time, its principles became a model for civil codes in nations across Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Even today, the code remains the foundation of legal systems in many countries, demonstrating its profound and lasting influence. Napoleon himself recognized the enduring importance of the code. He famously remarked, "My true glory is not the 40 battles I have won, for Waterloo's defeat will destroy the memory of those victories. But what will live forever is my civil code." This acknowledgement highlights the transformative power of the code, not just as a legal document, but as a symbol of modernization and progress. The Napoleonic Code represents one of Napoleon's greatest contributions to history. It reshaped French society, provided a model for governance rooted in equality and rationality, and left an indelible mark on the legal traditions of the modern world. While his military conquests have faded into history, the principles of the Napoleonic Code continue to influence lives around the globe. A testament to Napoleon's enduring vision and legacy. The Napoleonic Wars, spanning from 1803 to 1815, were a series of intense military campaigns that solidified Napoleon Bonaparte's reputation as one of history's greatest military strategists. These conflicts, born from the revolutionary upheaval in France and Napoleon's ambition to reshape Europe, showcased his tactical brilliance, adaptability, and relentless drive to expand the French Empire. One of Napoleon's most celebrated victories came early in the wars at the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805. It's often called the Battle of the Three Emperors. Facing a combined force of Austrian and Russian troops, Napoleon devised a daring strategy to lure the enemy into a trap by feigning weakness. As the Allies advanced, his forces struck with precision, securing a decisive victory that dismantled the Third Coalition and established his dominance in Europe. Napoleon's strategies often relied on speed, surprise, and the ability to adapt to shifting circumstances. At Jena-Auerstedt in 1806, he crushed the Prussian army with coordinated attacks, exploiting their slower decision-making. His campaigns were marked by the efficient use of corps, autonomous units capable of operating independently while remaining connected to the larger strategy, allowing him to outmaneuver larger and often better supplied opponents. The Napoleonic Wars were also a testament to Napoleon's vision of spreading French influence. By 1807, after the Treaty of Tilsit, he had not only defeated the Russian Empire but also established alliances that expanded French territory and created satellite states governed by loyalists and family members. The Confederation of the Rhine, the Duchy of Warsaw, and the Kingdom of Italy became key components of his vast empire. However, the wars were not without challenges. In 1808, the Peninsular War in Spain and Portugal became a prolonged and costly conflict, facing fierce resistance from Spanish guerrillas and British forces under the command of the Duke of Wellington. Napoleon's forces struggled to maintain control, marking one of the first significant cracks in his empire. The turning point in the Napoleonic Wars came with his ill-fated invasion of Russia in Macede 812. Napoleon assembled a massive army of over 600,000 men, the Grand Army, to force Tsar Alexander I into submission. Although he initially advanced successfully, the harsh Russian winter, long supply lines, and scorched earth tactics employed by the Russians decimated his forces. By the time he retreated, fewer than 10,000 soldiers were fit for combat. This catastrophic loss emboldened his enemies and weakened French dominance. In 1813, the Battle of Leipzig, also known as the Battle of Nations, marked Napoleon's first major defeat. Facing a coalition of Russian, Prussian, Austrian, and Swedish forces, his once dominant army was overwhelmed. The loss forced him to retreat to France, where his enemies closed in on Paris. Napoleon's military brilliance was ultimately not enough to sustain his vast empire. After his abdication in 1814 and exile to Elba, he made a dramatic return during the 100 Days in 1815, rallying his supporters and reigniting the wars. His final stand at the Battle of Waterloo, however, ended in defeat. The combined British and Prussian forces decisively crushed his army, leading to his second abdication and permanent exile to St. Helena. Despite his eventual downfall, the Napoleonic Wars left an indelible mark on history. Napoleon's campaigns reshaped Europe's political boundaries, spread the principles of the French Revolution, and introduced innovations in military strategy that are studied to this day. His rise and fall defined an era, and his name remains synonymous with both the brilliance and the cost of ambition. The 1812 invasion of Russia stands as one of the most pivotal and catastrophic episodes in Napoleon Bonaparte's career. What began as a bold effort to enforce his continental system and bring Tsar Alexander I into submission turned into a devastating campaign that marked the beginning of Napoleon's decline. Napoleon assembled the Grand Army, a massive force of over 600,000 soldiers drawn from across his vast empire. It was one of the largest armies ever gathered, reflecting his confidence and determination to crush Russian resistance. In June 1812, the campaign began as the army crossed the Niemen River into Russian territory, expecting a swift and decisive victory. However, the Russians employed a strategy of attrition, avoiding large-scale battles and retreating deeper into their vast territory. They used scorched earth tactics, burning villages, crops, and supplies to deny Napoleon's forces the resources they desperately needed. This left the Grand Army increasingly isolated and reliant on overstretched supply lines. The Battle of Borodino in September 1812 was the campaign's bloodiest encounter. Napoleon achieved a Pyrrhic victory, but at a staggering cost, with tens of thousands of casualties on both sides. The Russian army, though battered, retreated in good order, denying Napoleon the decisive triumph he sought. By the time he entered Moscow, the city had been abandoned and set ablaze by the retreating Russians, leaving nothing for his troops to claim or use. Napoleon lingered in Moscow for over a month, waiting for a peace offer that never came. As winter approached and his supplies dwindled, he was forced to retreat. The journey back proved catastrophic. The brutal Russian winter, starvation, disease, and relentless attacks by Russian forces decimated the Grand Army's soldiers, froze to death in the sub-zero temperatures. Horses collapsed from exhaustion, and morale plummeted. By the time Napoleon crossed back into friendly territory in December, fewer than 10,000 soldiers remained fit for combat. The once mighty Grand Army had been reduced to a shadow of its former strength, and the myth of Napoleon's invincibility was shattered. The invasion of Russia not only weakened Napoleon militarily, but also emboldened his enemies. Nations that had been subdued by his conquests now saw an opportunity to rise against him. The Sixth Coalition, consisting of Britain, Russia, Prussia, Austria, and other European powers, began to mobilize against France. For Napoleon, the Russian campaign was more than just a military disaster, was a turning point. It revealed the limits of his ambition and the vulnerability of his empire. The loss of manpower, resources, and prestige marked the beginning of a spiral that would lead to his eventual abdication and exile. The invasion of Russia stands as a stark reminder of the perils of overreach, even for a leader as brilliant and ambitious as Napoleon Bonaparte. By 1814, after years of relentless warfare and devastating losses, Napoleon Bonaparte's empire was crumbling. The coalition of Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria had united against him, their armies advancing steadily into France. Paris fell in March 1814, and with no path to victory, Napoleon was forced to abdicate on April 6, 1814. It was a humbling moment for a man who had once ruled much of Europe. As part of the terms of his abdication, Napoleon was exiled to the small Mediterranean island of Elba. The Treaty of Fontainebleau allowed him to retain the title of emperor and granted him sovereignty over the island. Elba was a far cry from the grandeur of his former empire, but Napoleon accepted the arrangement, biding his time as he considered his next move. Napoleon's brief rule on Elba was marked by characteristic energy and reform. Despite the island's modest size and resources, he set about modernizing it with the same determination he had shown in governing France. He improved agriculture, reorganized the administration, and built roads and infrastructure. He even established a small navy symbolic of his larger ambitions. Yet, Napoleon's restless spirit could not be contained. Reports of discontent in France, where King Louis XVIII struggled to gain the loyalty of the people, reached him. Many French citizens, including former soldiers and officers, remained loyal to Napoleon, disillusioned with the monarchy's inability to restore stability. These whispers of unrest ignited his determination to return. On February 26, 1815, less than a year after his exile began, Napoleon made his move. Escaping Elba with a small band of loyal followers, he set sail for the French mainland. His return was a dramatic gamble, but Napoleon understood the power of his name and the loyalty he still commanded. Landing in the south of France, he began his legendary march to Paris, gathering support as he went. As news of his return spread, soldiers and citizens alike rallied to his cause. When confronted by royalist troops sent to stop him, Napoleon boldly approached them, declaring, "Here I am. Kill your emperor if you wish." Instead of firing, the soldiers joined him, shouting their loyalty. By the time he reached Paris on March 20th, 1815, Napoleon had reclaimed the throne without firing a single shot. Napoleon's exile to Elba was a temporary setback, but it showcased his resilience and his unparalleled ability to inspire loyalty. His dramatic escape and return, known as the 100 Days, reignited his legacy and demonstrated that his influence could not be so easily extinguished. Yet this audacious move set the stage for his ultimate and final fall at Waterloo, a reminder that even Napoleon's brilliance could not defy the tides of history forever. In the spring of 1815, less than a year after his exile to Elba, Napoleon Bonaparte made a daring and unprecedented comeback. This period, known as the 100 Days, began with his audacious escape from the island and culminated in his dramatic reestablishment of power in France. It was a fleeting yet electrifying chapter in Napoleon's life, showcasing his unmatched charisma and his relentless drive to reclaim his empire. On February 26, 1815, Napoleon, accompanied by a small group of loyal followers, secretly departed Elba aboard a modest ship. His escape was a calculated gamble, driven by reports of widespread discontent with the restored Bourbon monarchy under King Louis XVIII. France was restless, and Napoleon sensed that the nation's dissatisfaction with the monarchy could pave the way for his return. Landing in the south of France near Cannes on March 1st, Napoleon began his legendary march toward Paris. His initial force was small, numbering only about 1,000 men, but his confidence and determination were unshaken. As he made his way north, he encountered royalist troops sent to intercept him. In a moment of theatrical defiance, Napoleon approached them, opened his coat, and declared, "Here I am. Kill your emperor if you wish." Instead of arresting him, the soldiers joined his cause, chanting, "Vive l'Empereur." This scene repeated itself as Napoleon continued his journey, rallying soldiers, veterans, and citizens alike. His progress became a triumphant march, with thousands flocking to his side. By the time he reached Paris on March 20th, Napoleon had amassed an army and reclaimed the throne without a single shot fired. The return of Napoleon sent shockwaves through Europe. The Allied powers, who had thought him securely contained, quickly mobilized against him. They viewed his resurgence as a direct threat to the fragile peace established after his abdication. Napoleon, aware of the overwhelming forces arrayed against him, worked tirelessly to consolidate his power, rally his supporters, and prepare for the inevitable conflict. During the 100 Days, Napoleon sought to restore his empire while appealing to revolutionary ideals. He issued proclamations promising reform and moderation, hoping to unite the nation. However, time was not on his side. The Allies, determined to crush him once and for all, gathered their forces for a decisive confrontation. The climax of the 100 Days came at the Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815. Facing a coalition army led by the Duke of Wellington and the Prussian commander Gebhard Lebarich von Blücher, Napoleon fought valiantly, but was ultimately defeated. The battle marked the end of his reign and the final collapse of his ambitions. The 100 Days remain a testament to Napoleon's extraordinary ability to inspire and lead. In just a few weeks, he reignited the spirit of an empire and captivated the world with his daring. Though his return was brief, it solidified his legacy as a leader of unparalleled ambition and resilience. Even in defeat, Napoleon's name continued to echo through history, a symbol of both the heights of human achievement and the limits of unchecked ambition. The Battle of Waterloo, fought on June 18, 1815, marked the dramatic and final chapter in Napoleon Bonaparte's storied career. It was a battle of immense stakes, with the fate of Europe hanging in the balance. For Napoleon, it was a last, desperate attempt to reclaim his empire and secure his place in history. For his enemies, it was the opportunity to end his ambitions once and for all. Having reclaimed power during the 100 Days, Napoleon moved swiftly to re-establish his control over France. Yet, his return had alarmed the Allied powers Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, who formed a seventh coalition to crush him. Determined to strike first, Napoleon planned to divide and conquer the coalition forces before they could unite. On the fields near Waterloo, in present-day Belgium, Napoleon faced the Duke of Wellington's Anglo-Allied army and the advancing Prussian forces under Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher. The battlefield was a patchwork of rolling hills, farms, and fortified villages, offering strategic positions for both sides. The stage was set for one of history's most decisive battles. Napoleon's strategy relied on his ability to outmaneuver Wellington before the Prussians could arrive. Early in the battle, French forces gained ground, capturing key positions such as La Haye-Sainte, a fortified farmhouse that became a focal point of intense fighting. However, delays in the attack allowed the Allies to regroup. And heavy rains from the previous night made the terrain muddy, slowing Napoleon's artillery and cavalry charges. As the day wore on, the battle became a brutal contest of endurance. Napoleon launched repeated assaults on the Allied lines, but Wellington's troops held firm. The arrival of Blücher's Prussian army in the afternoon turned the tide. Facing a coordinated assault from both the Anglo-Allied and Prussian forces, Napoleon's army began to falter. In a last, desperate effort, Napoleon deployed his Imperial Guard, his most elite and loyal troops, in a final assault. The charge, meant to break the Allied lines and secure victory, instead ended in disaster. The Imperial Guard was repelled, and cries of retreat echoed across the battlefield. The once mighty French army dissolved into chaos, with soldiers fleeing in disarray. Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo was total. It marked the end of his rule and the collapse of his empire. On June 22, 1815, just days after the battle, he abdicated for the second and final time, fleeing to the French coast. He hoped to escape to America, but was captured by British forces and exiled to the remote island of St. Helena. The Battle of Waterloo was more than just a military defeat, it was a turning point in European history. It ended over a decade of Napoleonic dominance and ushered in a new era of relative stability under the Congress of Vienna. For Napoleon, it was the ultimate reckoning, a reminder that even his extraordinary ambition and brilliance had limits. Waterloo remains a symbol of both triumph and tragedy, a moment when the course of history shifted dramatically. For Napoleon, it was a bitter end to a career defined by unprecedented highs and devastating lows. Yet, even in defeat, his name continued to inspire. A testament to the enduring legacy of one of history's most complex and extraordinary figures. After his crushing defeat at Waterloo in 1815 and subsequent abdication, Napoleon Bonaparte faced his final exile. This time, the Allied powers ensured there would be no return. He was sent to the remote island of St. Helena, a small windswept outpost in the South Atlantic, over 1,000 miles from the nearest mainland. Here, under strict British supervision, Napoleon would spend the last 6 years of his life, isolated from the world he had once commanded. St. Helena was a stark contrast to the grandeur of his imperial court. The island was rugged, its cliffs battered by relentless waves, and its climate damp and oppressive. Napoleon was housed at Longwood House, a modest and poorly maintained residence that offered little comfort. His movements were closely monitored, and his correspondence was heavily censored. Guards patrolled the perimeter, ensuring that escape was impossible. Despite these constraints, Napoleon's mind remained active. He spent much of his time reflecting on his life, dictating memoirs, and crafting his narrative of history. Assisted by loyal followers who had accompanied him into exile, Napoleon worked to shape his legacy, portraying himself as a visionary leader and a martyr of European monarchies. His writings were both a defense of his actions and an indictment of his enemies, particularly the British, whom he accused of treating him unjustly. Napoleon's reflections often turned to his military campaigns and the ideals of the French Revolution. He spoke of his desire to unite Europe under enlightened rule and lamented the missed opportunities and missteps that had led to his downfall. His writings from St. Helena sought to immortalize him not just as a conqueror, but as a statesman and reformer whose vision transcended his era. Physically, however, Napoleon's health began to deteriorate. The harsh conditions of the island, combined with the emotional toll of isolation, took a heavy toll. By 1817, he was frequently ill, experiencing symptoms such as chronic stomach pain and weakness. Despite occasional periods of activity, his condition steadily worsened over the years. In his final months, Napoleon's thoughts turned increasingly toward mortality. On May 5, 1821, he passed away at the age of 51. His last words reportedly included France, army, and Josephine, reflecting his enduring connection to his country, his military career, and his first wife. Napoleon's death did not end the debate over his legacy. His final years on St. Helena were marked by a combination of resignation and defiance, as he sought to ensure that his life and accomplishments would be remembered on his own terms. Even in exile, far removed from the courts and battlefields of Europe, he remained a figure of fascination, his story continuing to captivate the world. St. Helena became the final chapter in Napoleon's extraordinary life, a place of exile, but also a stage for reflection and the crafting of a legacy that would endure long after his death. His time on the island solidified his place in history as a complex and enduring figure, a man whose ambitions and ideas left an indelible mark on the world. Napoleon Bonaparte's extraordinary life came to an end on May 5, 1821, on the remote island of St. Helena, isolated and under constant British surveillance. Napoleon spent his final years reflecting on his rise and fall, shaping his legacy and battling the physical decline that marked his last days. His death closed a chapter in history, but it opened a series of debates and theories that continue to this day. In the weeks leading up to his death, Napoleon's health had deteriorated significantly. He suffered from chronic stomach pain, weakness, and intermittent fevers. His physicians struggled to diagnose or treat his condition, but they noted the severity of his decline. On his deathbed, Napoleon dictated his final will, expressing a wish to be buried on the banks of the Seine in Paris, among the people he loved and served. His last words reportedly included France, army, and Josephine, encapsulating the three great passions of his life. The official cause of death recorded by the attending physicians was stomach cancer, a diagnosis that seemed plausible given his family history of gastric ailments. However, alternative theories soon emerged, most notably the suggestion of arsenic poisoning. In the 1960s, an analysis of Napoleon's hair samples revealed high levels of arsenic, fueling speculation that he might have been deliberately poisoned. While this theory captivated public imagination, many experts now attribute the arsenic findings to environmental exposure, such as from the wallpaper or other materials at Longwood House, combined with the heavy medications he was given. Napoleon was initially buried on St. Helena in a simple, unmarked grave in the Valley of the Tomb, a secluded spot he had chosen himself. For nearly 2 decades, his remains lay far from the nation he had once ruled. However, in 1840, under the orders of French King Louis Philippe, Napoleon's body was exhumed and repatriated to France in an event known as the Retour des Cendres, Return of the Ashes. The journey was a grand spectacle, with his remains transported aboard the frigate Bellepoule and received in France with great ceremony. On December 15, 1840, Napoleon was reinterred in a magnificent tomb at Les Invalides in Paris, where he rests to this day. His final resting place, beneath a grand dome and surrounded by tributes to his achievements, became a symbol of his enduring legacy. The tomb draws visitors from around the world, serving as both a shrine to his memory and a reminder of the complexities of his life. Napoleon's legacy is vast and multifaceted. He remains one of history's most studied and debated figures, celebrated for his military genius and reforms, while criticized for his authoritarian rule and the immense human cost of his wars. His impact on Europe, from the Napoleonic Code to the redrawing of political boundaries, continues to shape modern society. The circumstances of Napoleon's death and the myths surrounding it only add to the mystique of a man whose life was larger than life itself. Whether as a conqueror, reformer, or exile, Napoleon's story remains a testament to ambition, resilience, and the enduring power of a name that still echoes through the corridors of history. Napoleon Bonaparte's life has captured the imagination of generations, making him one of the most depicted figures in history. From the battlefield to exile, his journey has been immortalized in art, literature, theater, and, more recently, film. These portrayals reflect the complexity of his character and the enduring fascination with his rise and fall. In his own time, Napoleon was both celebrated and vilified. Propaganda played a crucial role in shaping his image. French artists such as Jacques-Louis David depicted him as a heroic leader and visionary. David's iconic painting, Napoleon Crossing the Alps, shows a commanding figure astride a rearing horse, exuding power and determination. This idealized image contrasted sharply with the critical portrayals by his enemies, particularly in Britain, where caricatures by artists like James Gillray mocked him as a tyrant or an overreaching despot. In literature, Napoleon's influence extended far and wide. Contemporary accounts by his admirers and detractors alike painted vivid pictures of his life and leadership. Later, writers such as Leo Tolstoy wove him into their narratives. With War and Peace exploring his role in the broader scope of European history, Napoleon became a symbol of ambition and the human cost of power, serving as both inspiration and cautionary tale. The 19th century also saw the rise of plays and operas that delved into his personal and political life. Napoleon's relationship with Josephine and his dramatic battles became subjects of fascination, emphasizing both his humanity and the grandeur of his story. As cinema emerged in the 20th century, Napoleon's life transitioned seamlessly onto the screen. Early films portrayed him as a larger-than-life figure, focusing on his military campaigns and romantic entanglements. Abel Gance's 1927 silent epic, Napoleon, remains a groundbreaking work, renowned for its innovative use of cinematic techniques to convey the scale and intensity of his life. In modern times, filmmakers have continued to explore Napoleon's complex legacy. Stanley Kubrick famously planned an ambitious biopic that never came to fruition, but its influence is still felt in the works of directors who followed. Ridley Scott's 2023 film, Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix, adds a contemporary lens to his life, focusing on his meteoric rise, tumultuous relationship with Josephine, and eventual fall. While the film has drawn criticism for historical inaccuracies, it reflects the ongoing fascination with Napoleon as both a historical figure and a cinematic subject. Napoleon's legacy has also been examined through humor and satire. Films like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Time Bandits present exaggerated or whimsical versions of him, showcasing the enduring flexibility of his persona in popular culture. In art, literature, and film, Napoleon is consistently depicted as a man of contrasts, brilliant and flawed, ambitious and tragic, revolutionary and authoritarian. These portrayals often reflect the cultural and political contexts of their creators, underscoring how his legacy has been reinterpreted to suit different eras and narratives. From grand paintings to blockbuster films, Napoleon's image remains a powerful symbol of ambition, leadership, and the human struggle for greatness. Each portrayal adds another layer to the mythos of a man who continues to intrigue and inspire, cementing his place not only in history, but also in the collective imagination of the world. Napoleon Bonaparte's life offers a wealth of lessons that continue to resonate across time, touching on ambition, leadership, vision, and the perilous balance between greatness and hubris. His story, filled with extraordinary triumphs and devastating failures, serves as both inspiration and cautionary tale, illustrating the heights one can achieve through determination and the depths to which overreach can lead. At the heart of Napoleon's journey is his boundless ambition. From his modest beginnings on the island of Corsica, he rose to command armies, reshape nations, and stand as one of the most powerful figures in history. His ascent demonstrates the transformative power of talent, hard work, and self-belief. Napoleon's ability to seize opportunities, think strategically, and act decisively propelled him to the heights of leadership, offering a powerful reminder that success often belongs to those who dare to dream and pursue those dreams with relentless energy. As a leader, Napoleon displayed qualities that remain benchmarks for excellence. His ability to inspire loyalty among his troops, even in the face of overwhelming odds, was unparalleled. He led by example, sharing hardships with his men and earning their unwavering devotion. His strategic genius, demonstrated in battles like Austerlitz, showcased the importance of preparation, adaptability, and understanding one's adversaries. In governance, his reforms, including the Napoleonic Code, highlight the potential for leadership to create lasting, meaningful change. Yet, Napoleon's story also reveals the dangers of unchecked ambition. His drive to dominate Europe, his relentless pursuit of glory, and his refusal to recognize limits ultimately led to his downfall. The disastrous invasion of Russia and the crushing defeat at Waterloo underscore how overconfidence and an inability to adapt to changing circumstances can unravel even the most formidable plans. His life reminds us that true greatness requires not just vision and courage, but also humility and the wisdom to know when to pause. Napoleon's legacy also offers insights into the complexity of power and its impact on the individual. His rise and rule reveal how power can magnify both strengths and flaws. While he used his authority to modernize France and spread revolutionary ideals, his authoritarian tendencies and the human cost of his conquests remind us of the fine line between leadership and tyranny. Perhaps one of the most enduring lessons from Napoleon's life is the importance of shaping one's narrative. Even in defeat and exile, he worked tirelessly to frame his story, ensuring that his name would be remembered not just as a conqueror, but as a visionary and reformer. This illustrates the power of legacy, not just what we achieve in life, but how we are remembered afterward. Napoleon Bonaparte's life is a testament to the extraordinary potential of human ambition and the inevitable consequences of its excesses. It teaches us that greatness is not solely defined by victories or power, but by the ability to inspire, to lead with purpose, and to leave a meaningful impact. His story invites us to reflect on our own aspirations, reminding us to strive for excellence while remaining mindful of the limits that temper ambition with wisdom. As we close this chapter on Napoleon Bonaparte's remarkable journey, we're left with a figure who transcends time, a man of unparalleled ambition, brilliance, and complexity. His life reminds us that the pursuit of greatness can shape the world, but it also carries profound lessons about balance, humility, and legacy. From the heights of an empire to the isolation of exile, Napoleon's story continues to inspire and provoke thought. If you've enjoyed this exploration of Napoleon's life, don't forget to like this video, share it with history enthusiasts, and subscribe to Bytes for more deep dives into the lives of those who shaped our world. Leave a comment below. What's your take on Napoleon's legacy? Visionary hero or cautionary tale? Thank you for watching, and until next time, let's continue to uncover the stories that keep history alive.